Imagine, just for a second, the ultimate performance review. You're sitting in an office, maybe sweating a little, and the person across the desk holding your file isn't your boss. It's not the CEO.
Yep.
It's the guy who started the whole enterprise, the very first guy, Adam, as in Adam and Eve.
The founder. The
Yeah.
original prototype.
Exactly. Now, what if he didn't just disappear into the pages of Genesis? What if he came back today to look at our world, our iPhones, our stock markets, the climate crisis, and he decides to give us all an exit interview?
Wow.
That is the wild, slightly terrifying, and honestly fascinating premise of the book we are deep diving into today. It's called Adam Returns and the Five New Commandments, The Uniting Testament by Michael J. Simmons.
Yeah, I have to say, right off the bat, this is one of the most unique things we've ever covered. It's not quite a novel. It's definitely not a standard theology textbook. It's this dense puzzle box of a book that mixes metaphysical self-help, some really biting social commentary, and poetry.
It's a lot to take in. And the format itself is a bit of a trip. The author calls it an acrostic anthology. So you're reading these poems, but you're also kind of looking for hidden codes where the first letters spell things out. It feels like you're cracking a safe while reading scripture.
Which is intentional, I think.
Yeah.
But the author, Michael J. Simmons, he's not subtle about the goal here. He's not just trying to entertain us with word games. He calls this book a call to action.
Okay.
The central argument is stark and, frankly, urgent. He believes humanity is standing on the brink of extinction.
And he's not talking about, like, an asteroid hitting us.
No. He's talking about a spiritual extinction that then leads to a physical one. And the driver of this whole collapse is what he identifies as insatiable greed. The mission of this text is to pull us back from that ledge by replanting a very specific idea, what he calls the seed of no greed.
The seed of no greed. That's a catchy phrase. Almost sounds like a nursery rhyme, but as we found out reading this, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. And to get there, we have to talk about these 5 new commandments. Because apparently the original 10 weren't enough to keep us on track.
Think of it as a software update. Humanity 2.0 requires a patch because the operating system is glitching. We're going to unpack commandments 11 through 15. But before we get to the rules, we really have to talk about the messenger. Because Michael J. Simmons isn't claiming he just sat down and brainstormed this.
Yeah, let's get into the channeling aspect. Because for a lot of you listening, this is where the skeptical alarm bells might start ringing. The text claims that the spirit of Adam is actually within the author.
A bold claim.
A very bold claim. That Adam has returned of his own free will, sanctioned by heaven, because he has, and this is a quote, intimate knowledge of the garden.
It frames the whole book not as fiction, but as a direct message. But whether you take that literally as a spiritual channeling or more metaphorically like a literary device, the backstory he provides explains why he feels like the vessel for this. It's rooted in some deep personal trauma.
It really is. He describes his childhood in a way that feels very raw. He was raised Catholic, but he says he had the Bible batched in by men in white robes. That's a heavy image.
It is. It paints a picture of religion being used as a blunt instrument, not a source of comfort. It creates distance rather than connection.
And it gets sadder. He talks about losing his faith young, around 7 or 8, when his parents divorced. He says he felt shitty with God. He even describes poking his tongue up at space, just like completely done with the whole concept.
Wow.
He felt cursed on the inside, even if he looked like a normal kid on the outside.
And that internal brokenness is key, I think, to understanding the text. In a lot of mystical traditions, the break is where the light gets in. For Simmons, the turning point didn't happen in a church. It happened while he was traveling, exploring South Africa and Egypt. He describes finding an unlocked door beneath the desert where his pen became his sword.
So the skepticism falls away, and he enters this partnership. And that's how he describes it. A partnership with the spirit of Adam to leave a trail of breadcrumbs back to the divine.
And having Adam as the narrator, it just changes the tone of the whole critique. He's not looking at Earth as a politician or a scientist. He's looking at it as a gardener.
The original tenants.
Exactly, the original tenant. And he is horrified by what the current tenants have done to the landscaping.
He has a specific name for the planet, too. He calls it the Orb Eden, which sounds a bit sci-fi, but I kind of like it.
Me too. And the report card for the Orb Eden is, well, it's failing. The source material argues that Eden is spent. It uses very visceral, violent language. It describes the Earth as being raped by industry.
Oof.
Yeah. The argument is that we are on a collision course with extinction because we've fundamentally misunderstood the original lesson of the garden.
This was the part that actually surprised me the most, the reinterpretation of the fall. We all know the Sunday school version: apple, snake, Eve, sin, kicked out. But there's a poem in the book called Forward, and it's written as a letter from Adam to Eve, dearest Eve, and it just flips the script.
It completely reframes the motivation. Usually we think of the temptation as, the knowledge of good and evil, disobedience. But in this text, Adam claims he had no fear of snake. He wasn't scared of the devil figure. He says he was intrigued by Eve's greed.
Okay, let's dig into that. How does greed fit into the apple story? I always thought it was about wanting to be like God.
The text adds a very specific physical detail. It says the fruit was overripe and not suited for picking. Essentially, it was rotten. But, and this is key, the seed inside is all right. And that seed is the seed of no greed. So the text argues that eating the fruit wasn't just about knowledge, it was about consumption. It was about taking something that wasn't ready to be taken.
So the fall wasn't just about breaking a rule. It was about the desire to possess something immediately.
Exactly. Immediate gratification. The text suggests the snake's voice caused the soul to harden, leading to that desire to control, to own, to consume. And here's a detail I found fascinating. The text says that after that moment, Adam didn't just leave with Eve. He wandered off alone.
Yeah, that line threw me. He says he lived and died thrice. It implies he's had these past lives, wandering, trying to figure it out before returning now. It makes Adam feel less like a statue and more like a weary traveler who's come back to say, okay, guys, I've seen enough. We really need to fix this.
And the urgency comes from this concept of universal time. The text mentions that universal time is back in sight and time is ticking. It creates this feeling that we're at a transition point, a deadline. We either replant that seed of no greed or we face what the text bluntly calls extinction.
So let's look at the solution, the 5 new commandments, the update patch for the human soul. We know the originals: don't steal, don't kill. But Simmons, or Adam, says we need 11 through 15 to survive the modern world. Commandment 11 seems pretty standard at first. Faith is needed to succeed.
It sounds standard, but you have to look at how he defines faith. There's a poem called Beyond the Church, where he makes a crucial distinction. He welcomes churchgoers, but he also explicitly welcomes skeptics who seek to believe, and even the drunk and drug takers.
So faith isn't about sitting in a pew or having a perfect moral track record.
No. The text says faith is not religion. Navigate to next is void of maps. So in this context, faith is just that conscious connection to something bigger than yourself. Trust in the journey even when you don't have a map. It's the prerequisite.
Okay, so Commandment 11 gets you on the board. But Commandment 12, this feels like the absolute core of the book. Do not follow in man's greed.
This is the pivot point. If Commandment 11 is the engine, 12 is the steering wheel. The text defines this commandment as fixed. It implies that adhering to man's greed, the accumulation of wealth, status, destroying nature, is exactly what has derailed the Orb Eden.
It's pretty uncompromising about this. There's a poem, Bottom Dollar, that basically says, if you are chasing the dollar, you're chasing death. Trillions cannot buy love. It's heavy stuff.
It suggests an alternative currency. The text speaks of karma and love as the things we should be banking. The argument is that greed acts as a blinder. So Commandment 12 is a direct order to opt out of that value system. It's not just don't be greedy, it's don't play the game that demands greed.
Which leads right into Commandment 13, which sounds a little bit ominous. Stay within boundaries or fall on your sword. Fall on your sword. That's intense. What are the boundaries here?
I interpret this through the explore theme. There's a tension. He invites you to explore your potential, but within the boundaries of natural law and moral integrity. We tend to think freedom means doing whatever we want. But this says if you exceed those natural boundaries, if you just rampage through the garden taking whatever you want, you face your own destruction.
You're free to explore, but you're not free from the consequences.
Precisely. It's about accountability. You can climb the mountain, but if you ignore the weather, you fall.
Moving to Commandment 14. Seek only your purpose and not for life's reason. I got stuck on this one for a minute. It sounds like wordplay. What's the difference between purpose and reason?
It is wordplay, but it's a subtle metaphysical distinction. Seeking a reason for life often implies looking for an external justification, like you need an excuse to exist. It's reactive.
Like asking, why am I here? Or what's the reason for the suffering?
Right, whereas seeking purpose is internal and proactive. It's your spiritual job description. The text says Commandment 14 is protection from treason.
Treason against who? Yourself.
Treason against your soul. If you are constantly looking for a reason defined by society, I'm here to be rich, I'm here to be famous, you're betraying your soul's actual design. Sticking to your purpose protects you.
I like that. Stop asking why and start doing what.
Yeah.
And finally, Commandment 15. Be in sync with your soul before judged on arrival.
This is the deadline. This connects directly to survival. The idea is you need to achieve this synchronization, this alignment of your actions with your soul while you are alive. You can't wait until you die to figure it out.
Judged on arrival. It sounds like a customs checkpoint at the airport.
That is actually a very, very accurate analogy for how the text describes the afterlife.
Okay, yeah, let's dig into that, because the book has a very specific view of what happens when the screen goes black. It talks about a turnstile and a chamber.
It paints a picture where you enter a judgment chamber. But here's the twist. There isn't some guy with a white beard on a throne. The text explicitly says you engage in self-judgment.
Which honestly sounds worse. If I have to judge myself, I know all the stuff I got away with.
Exactly. You can't hide from your own intentions. The text says cheaters cannot prosper because eventually you have to face your own conscience in that chamber. You are the judge, the jury, and the defendant.
So if you're in sync per Commandment 15, that meeting goes well.
You enter inside and rise. You go home, which is the text's word for heaven. But if not, if you've been driven by greed and ego, you might be sending yourself back for another round. The text mentions incarnations and cycling back.
Round and round the garden.
Exactly. The goal is to end your days in Eden knowing you'll go home. If you don't learn the lesson of no greed, Adam says you are doomed with no chance for forgiveness. Thrice I lived and died alone. You just stay in the cycle until you get it right.
I want to zoom out for a second and talk about the style, because we've been discussing the philosophy, but the format is part of the message. We mentioned it's an acrostic anthology.
Right. So for you listening, if you look at the poem titled Faith, the first letter of each line spells out F-A-I-T-H, or a poem about the environment might spell out G-L-O-B-L-W-A-R-M-I-N-G down the margin.
It feels a bit puzzling. Like, why make the reader work for it?
That's the point.
Yeah.
It forces you to slow down. You can't skim it. You are decoding the message while absorbing the poetry. It mirrors the idea of finding breadcrumbs. It requires active participation.
Speaking of active participation, the text directs a lot of its fire toward our current systems. It's not just personal advice. It's a pretty harsh critique of society.
Oh, it's brutal on institutions. It refers to banks and financial systems as savages of savings.
Savages of savings. That is a bumper sticker waiting to happen.
It is. And it describes the military as millions spent to murder millions. It does not pull punches. It argues that our institutions are built on that old money and greed that Commandment 12 forbids. It calls for a united resolution and institutions restructuring.
So we can't just fix our hearts. We have to fix the structures that monetize our greed.
That's the idea. And this ties directly to the environment. Adam is a gardener, so naturally he's worried about the bees.
Right.
The environmental theme is massive. The poems, global warming and water, are very specific. There's a haunting line, Mother Earth will cease to breathe without change. It frames the planet not as a resource, but as a living entity that we are failing to tend.
It really emphasizes that connection between the spiritual and the physical. You can't be spiritual while you're destroying the orb Eden.
Correct. Greed destroys the soul and the planet. The seed of no greed saves the soul and the planet. It's a holistic view. You can't separate your spiritual health from your ecological footprint.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one practical tool the book offers. Because talking about saving the soul is great, but how do you do it on a Tuesday? The book mentions the empty chair challenge.
I love this concept. It's in the poems Heaven on Eden and Focused. It is a call to physically or mentally offer a spot for your spirit. The line is, now one becomes two.
So literally leaving a chair empty for God or for your spirit.
Yes, it's a visualization technique. Imagine sitting at your desk and you designate that empty chair for the divine.
It changes the dynamic of the room immediately.
Completely. It forces you to focus on that connection. If you imagine your spirit sitting right there watching you scroll through your phone or yell at traffic, you might make different choices. You might be less greedy. You might check your ego.
And checking the ego is the final boss fight in this book.
It is. The text says egos breathing here are thieves. They steal your purpose. They drive the greed. The empty chair is a way to bypass the ego and reconnect. A simple reminder that you are never actually alone.
So we have Adam returning, telling us we trashed the rental, giving us 5 new rules, and warning us about a self-performance review at a cosmic turnstile. Who is this actually for?
Not just for believers, the subtitle is The Uniting Testament. The author's message explicitly lists Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, and crucially skeptics. It welcomes the sane and insane, the outlaws, and those that police.
It's a big tent strategy.
The biggest tent. The argument is that what you call yourself doesn't matter as much as how you behave. If you operate from the seed of no greed, you're aligned, regardless of the label on your jersey. If you operate from greed, you're missing the point, no matter how often you go to church.
It's surprisingly practical. It basically says stop fighting about the name of God and start acting like decent tenants.
Precisely. It's a move from dogma to action.
For a topic that deals with extinction and judgment, it ends on a somewhat hopeful note. The end is only the beginning.
It does. It reframes death not as a finality, but a transition, exit time. But it leaves the responsibility squarely on us. There's a section called On My Way.mp3 that asks a question I've been thinking about all week. When you pray, do you call God's name in vain, or do you truly awaken?
That hits hard. Calling God's name in vain, not as a swear word, but praying without changing your heart. Praying in vain.
Exactly. Asking for grace while holding on to greed. That is the ultimate vanity, according to this text. It asks us to align our internal state with our external requests.
Well, that is certainly something to chew on. Whether you buy the channeling aspect or you just see it as a poetic warning, the message of no greed is pretty hard to argue with, especially looking at the state of the orb Eden right now.
Indeed. It challenges us to look at our own karmic footprint. Are we contributing to the rot, or are we replanting the seed?
A massive thank you to our expert for helping us decode this acrostic anthology today. And to you listening, thanks for diving deep with us. Here is a final thought to leave you with, straight from the implications of this text. If you had to walk through that turnstile today and sit in the judgment chamber alone, would you be able to high-five yourself, or would you send yourself back for another round? Think about it. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.